Perek Azov Daf Men Test, sponsored the Refuah Shalema for Leah Bas Devora. The Gemara brings a machlokas Tanoim, apparently similar to the machlokas of Rav Rabbi Yochanan. The previous Amud discussed machlokas Rav Rabbi Yochanan concerning one who pays a down payment for merchandise. If he reneges, is the mishapara on the whole amount or only on the part he paid for? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yehuda argue concerning a lender who took collateral for part of the value of a loan that was not paid by the borrower until the end of Shemitah. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds the loan is not canceled by Shemitah. Since he has collateral, he does not have to press the borrower for the money. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi holds that the collateral is, if it is equivalent to the whole loan, it is not canceled. Otherwise, it is canceled. The Gemara assumed there would be no point for the lender to take a security if he cannot use it as repayment for the loan. Therefore, at least that part of the loan should not be canceled. The Gemara answers that if the collateral is worth less than the loan, it merely records the loan so the borrower cannot deny it, but it cannot be withheld by the lender as payment for the loan. The next point the Gemara discusses, Rav permitted Rav Kahana to renege on a sale of linen where the price went up for the part the buyer did not pay for. Reneging on a verbal commitment if circumstances change is not considered mechusar amana. The person is not considered untrustworthy. The verse in the Torah that states Hein Tzedek, referring to one's agreement, refers to the seller that he has to be sincere initially. However, we learned before that one who reneges on his verbal commitment, Ein Ruach HaChomim Noche Heimenu. Rabbi Yochanan ben Masya reneged on his son's commitment to workers he hired to provide them food for their work. Until they began working, they understood the son's commitment is dependent on the father's agreement. However, once they started working, then the agreement is binding. Rabbi Yochanan distinguishes between reneging on a verbal agreement for something such as a large gift and a small gift. One who reneges on a small gift is a mechusar amana. Therefore, if a Yisrael tells a Levi he will give him Meiser Rishon, he can separate it as Trumas Meiser for what he owes the Kohen. The Gemara brings a case that proves if one deposits money by someone who says, Ha Beisa Kamoch, my house is at your disposal, it means that you are leaving it here at your own risk. The Gemara now discusses the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah, who holds that once the seller gets the money, he can renege, not the buyer. A Bryce explains that this is as long as the merchandise is with him to ensure that he will guard it. But if the buyer rented the warehouse where his merchandise is, the seller can no longer renege because if a fire breaks out, the buyer will protect his merchandise. Rav Chizda states that one demands his money back from the seller to save himself a loss of money without a mishapara as an unanticipated government tax on goods. Now we come to a new Mishnah, the laws of Onah, price fraud. Number one, if the seller overcharges or the buyer underpays less than a sixth, the sale stands. Number two, if the seller overcharges a sixth or the buyer underpays a sixth, the defrauded party can void the sale or demand a refund. Number three, if the seller overcharges or the buyer underpays more than a sixth, either one can void the sale. The Mishnah discusses the amount of time the buyer has to void the sale or demand a refund, the amount of time he has to show the purchased item to a relative. Rabbi Tarfon holds the discrepancy in price fraud is a third. However, he allowed the defrauded party to renege for a whole day. There is a machlokes Rav and Shmuel concerning the law of the sixth. Rav holds it is a sixth more or less of the true value of the item. Shmuel holds that in addition, price fraud includes the money paid. They both agree if something worth 6 was sold for 5, the seller was defrauded. If something worth 6 was sold for 7, the buyer was defrauded. They argue where something worth 5 was sold for 6, the buyer paid a fifth more than the real value, or something worth 7 was sold for 6, the seller was underpaid by a seventh of its value. According to Rav, where the buyer paid more than a sixth as an item worth 5 for 6, both can back out. Where it was an item worth 7 that he paid 6, it is presumed that the seller waived the difference. However, Shmuel holds where there is a deviation of a sixth, either the value of the item or the amount paid, it is a fraud.